Okay, so number one, there's a lot of motor vehicle abatement applications and certificates that Tammy typed up that you guys can sign. So if you want to, again, stagger it, we're still not open to the public yet. We might get news tomorrow about that at our staff meeting. Oh, there's Tom. Hi, Tom.
Yeah, hi, sorry I'm a little
Morning.
late here. Morning.
Morning.
So that and number two, there's actually 4 remaining exemption applications. They had until April 1st to file. So they're all dated before April 1. And I went through them. The applications, they're all fine. I mean, 2 of them were ones we were waiting for. 2 of them are new ones, but they all qualify. And if you want to review those and sign those, we'll hold off on doing the certificates until you review the application and sign off on those. So you'll have the motor vehicle and you'll have the 4 exemption applications when you guys come in, whenever you decide to come in, today or during the week. Number 3, reminder letters are sent out for the 3 ABC filings that didn't come back. I had requested that even if they filed an extension, that they still send in, there's a generic form that I came up with, just so we have it on file that they're running late, because some of these don't get filed until well after their taxes are sent in. And that could be the summer. So, I mean, we're just saying, look, we know you're out there. We still need this form back. And, they'll be very late, but there's no penalties, other than putting them back on the tax rolls, which typically we don't do because we know these are coming in late. So those should be, all of those filings either are going to be the true filings or they'll be the actual late extensions that they're getting a request for. Number 4, so it looks like, and I have talked to you guys about this, last week we had a roundtable meeting with the Berkshire County Assessors Association, and it was to discuss different topics. Basically the main topic though was the 504 utilities, about how every municipality has to value those in-house using a different method than the actual companies used when they report their information on a form of list. And the general consensus is that at least for fiscal year 22, communities are going to hire out for that because none of us know actually how to value those yet. We're trying as an association to come up with a spreadsheet, but we've already lost one person that was working on it. Randall over in Lenox, who was sort of spearheading the whole thing, he took another job. Well, he took a different job in East Hampton, leaving the position open, and he was working on this. I still think he's going to, but because he's going through starting a new position, he doesn't have the time to do it. So I was going to work on it too with him. And at this point, it just looks like, at least for this fiscal year, the best thing to do, because there's so much uncertainty with how to value that. We've got 3 of them, and we've got 2 of the bigger ones, how to actually value those in-house, at least for fiscal 22, so we don't have a risk of not getting our valuations or our tax rate set. And I've already talked to Mike about it, and when I put in our budget, I had put it in as maybe it being a special article, or if he could tell me where the money could come from. And he said that he was just waiting to hear from me after we had this meeting with the BCAA as to how we're going to go forward as what Berkshire County is going to be doing. So it's $6,000, and I think what we're going to try to do is see what we have left over in our budget at the end of the fiscal year, is we still should have money left over, that we haven't spent because of not going to UMass and a few other things. And we'll see what's left in there. And then he said that, we'll find the rest of the money without going to town meeting. So that's where that stands. And I actually have to send the form of list to RRC. They're the company that we use for personal property that would be handling the values. So they're looking for those values now. But what I'm going to tell them is, look, right, I'll send this information to you, But right now, all I have is an estimate of what it's going to be. It's typically $2,000 per account, and we have 3 accounts, and not to bill us, for it until after the town meeting. Until it will, if we can't come up with the total money, for obviously not from our budget, it before that date. I just want to make sure that they don't do all the work and bill us. I'll say, look, you have to hold on to these until we're ready. And every community is doing the same thing if they're a town meeting type of government. So that'll be a relief to be able to do it that way for the 504 values. And let's see what happens when the bills go out, because what we are hearing from some of the other communities that have valued these already, either on their own or with RRC, is that there's one company, it's NSTAR, which is Eversource, and we do have them here, but we have such a small amount. I think the total value on that is less than 2,000. So it may not be an issue here, but what they're doing in other communities is they're fighting it. They're going to the appellate tax board, and they're also not paying the interest that's being charged against them because their bills are late. And that's their defense right now for not agreeing with this method of valuation. And so they're also saying that it's possible when it comes to setting the tax rate, at least for the first year, maybe going forward, I'm not sure, is to look at that in our overlay. We may have to take the difference between what we were valuing them and what the value that they typically submit, which is net book value, and the value that RRC comes up with, because the whole point in doing this is the appellate tax board initially came back, and I believe it was a case in Boston, and they said they're agreeing with the way that the assessors did it. So that set a precedent going forward that if it was okay with the appellate tax board for that case, it should carry out for all the communities in Massachusetts. But the state isn't going to come in and pay for our legal fees if they decide to go all the way to the appellate tax board. But so far, National Grid, Berkshire Gas, they've all paid the bills on a much higher value. So we're going to not only, we may be paying $6,000 to have it valued by a separate appraiser, but we're going to be generating a lot more money on the personal property. Typically, they say the increase is around 47% on these accounts. So, you get like a Pittsfield or a Springfield where, it's millions and millions of valuation. Those values have doubled for those municipalities. And so you can see how much more taxes they're going to be bringing in. Ours will double as well. At least that's what RRC is telling me. So, we'll get new growth for the first year, and we will get a double valuation on 2 of our highest paying taxpayers, which are Berkshire Gas and National Grid. So it's a win-win situation as far as the methodology, not necessarily the fact that, they may down the road decide we're not agreeing with this and we're going to fight every municipality and the decision that the appellate tax board brought forth. But, at this point, there's so many, things that are out there that we're not sure of, because the methodology is not clear to assessors on how to do this. That's why we have to, at least for the first year, have someone else do it for us. And hopefully by next summer, we will have come up with our own same methodology, but an easier way of actually doing it in-house, whether it's a spreadsheet that gets sent around and each community pays a little bit more in dues that would go towards the licensing, which we've got to buy the licensing for a manual that's going to give us the valuations of all these different items that they typically value for us. I wanted to give you guys an update on that, because that's the thing that I think most municipalities are dealing with right now. We're a smaller community, so the impact may not be as bad, but these are huge numbers in other cities and towns. So at least for this year, we should be okay with the way we're doing it, because we'll have RRC do it. And then, next year's a whole different game. We'll see what happens. But I've already discussed it with Mike, and he knows what's going on, and he's well aware that all communities have to deal with this fiscal year.
So Michael,
it could be a big issue.
So the three are National Grid, Berkshire Gas, and a little water plant, the water company down in Glendale.
No, it's it used to be Western Mass Electric. It's just a small little entity. It's not National Grid. National Grid is actually one of the highest taxpayers that we have. It's Western, it's all these smaller ones were bought up by NSTAR, and Western Mass was one of them. So they still report a form of list to us, but it's for the smallest amount possible. But the state doesn't care how small it is. They're still saying you're going to double the value, and that's why they're going to fight.
So
it,
what are the
What
three,
is it?
yeah, what are the three that we're talking about?
The three different companies are National Grid, Berkshire Gas, and Eversource, which is it's Eversource NSTAR.
Okay.
Well,
So
where,
the three.
Mike, where is it?
Oh,
Is it
this is for telephone poles. This is their all of their distribution equipment.
Oh,
That's what we have. That's what they're telling us, that as an assessor, we have to value now. And so
right. I guess
before,
Doug and I are just wondering where the Eversource equipment is.
when it
It's the
comes
pole
through,
fence.
it doesn't list the location. It just says various. So
So
it's
it's
for whatever.
it's the poles themselves, all the transformers,
Yes,
all of the
everything,
wire,
and stuff that's underground.
yeah, the natural gas pipelines and all the connections. valves.
Underground conduits, which typically they tried this before without the state tried doing something like this before. They sent out a questionnaire wondering if we had the resources to value these ourselves. I sort of saw this coming, but it took an appellate tax board case to be heard and won by a municipality in order for them to say, oh, you know what? And this isn't the state that's doing it. The state never valued these. We took the values that they gave us. So we were always saying, trusting them and saying, okay, Berkshire Gas is saying you've got, for example, 2 million in equipment. We'll go with it. That was net book value. Now what we're saying is you have to give us a list of every single item in your inventory, and we have to value it using what's called a 50-50 method. It's not net book, so we're not just taking what they're giving us. So you should see the spreadsheets that they've submitted. They're hundreds of pages long. And actually, so that's what's so daunting about it is we don't have the resources to go line by line and value something that I've never even heard of before. So it's an education process and getting assessors up to speed, whether or not they will be or not, in valuing something that they've never valued on their own before. It's
So-
kind of like the when the wireless cell phone companies, they didn't decide, but the Department of Revenue decided that we're going to throw that back on the local assessors. And we just sat back thinking, how in the world do we value things that we've never even heard of before? I mean, I knew what 2G and 3G and 4G equipment was, but to actually see a list of it and then try to value it is something completely different. So there's companies out there that specialize in this, and that's what we're going to get, at least for this first year. There's probably some communities that are going to hire these groups forever, but it's what's going to determine the long run of this is how these cases hold up in court if they end up going to court. Is the appellate tax board going to continue to side with the assessors? Because the moment that they decide not to side with the assessors, none of us are going to do this anymore. You know, none of us are going to say, why would we hire a company if we can't win at the appellate tax board? So there's a lot hanging on fiscal 22 because every 351 communities have to do it this year. And the state will not certify your values or your tax rate until you can show your own method that is very similar to the 50-50 method that the appraisers are using. If not, I don't want to be that community that's in a situation like that.
So Michael,
yeah,
does the Tennessee gas line also pay taxes on the pipeline?
that valuation comes from the DOR.
So
That part is extremely complicated, and they have to actually report. We don't even get form of list from them. They file a form of list with the DOR, and the DOR values it. They also value the new growth, and they sent it to us usually in July, so I can act. And at that point, you're going to have a private appraiser if your community is going to question what the Department of Revenue came up with. In most places, they run with the value, because again, we would have to hire a separate appraiser to question the Department of Revenue's value. So Department of Revenue value Verizon New England, which is not the wireless side of it. They value what's called level 3 communications, and they value the Tennessee Gas Pipeline. They give me the new growth values for those every year. Hopefully they'll never make us have to do those, because that'll be very, very scary if that's the case. So I think we've got it okay for fiscal year 22 at this point. But I will definitely keep you guys up to date on what RRC is doing, and where we're coming in on those values. Again, it's kind of pointless to do this if we're not going to see a big jump in the values. The whole point in this was they weren't paying their fair share, so they took them they went to the appellate tax board initially, and they didn't side with them. So at this point, I think they set up precedent that we can win these cases going forward if we have to. Hopefully they won't file, but you never know. Any more questions on that? Okay. Number 5, I don't know if you remember, but last year, the farmland valuations didn't change on our chapter land. That's something that another item that comes from the DOR. They value the chapter land per acre price, and then they send it to us, and I have to go through all the chapter lands that we have, update their values. I think because of COVID last year, they decided to just leave them alone, which has never ever happened in all the years that I've done this. This year though, they sent a list of the new changes, so it's pretty similar to what they sent the year before. Actually, I didn't look very, very closely, but I will, but I think it's the same number. So I'll go forward and change those. I just wanted to make you aware that the chapter land values will change this year. They did not change last year.
Mike, I think Patrick had his hand up a minute ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You're on mute, Patrick.
Just curious, what's the aggregate amount of tax that the utilities pay?
Let's see.
What magnitude is it? I'm just curious.
I can get that. I'll get that number to you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I know that National Grid, which still goes by Mass Electric, at least when they file, they are our top taxpayer. So I mean that's going to go from what we're valuing them to, and I believe it's around 7 million right now. That's going to double from this valuation that we're going to be doing. And that's the scary part, because again, all the years I've done this, we've always taken the value that they gave us. And we think what might happen from this, which is not a good thing, and unfortunately, it might be the byproduct of us having to change these values and increase the values, is they may end up, because if they don't go to the appellate tax board, excuse me, they may take that extra amount that they're being charged from all the communities and actually put it in as a bill to all their customers. So I work in our association.
Oh, no doubt.
We wouldn't be surprised if they have a special fee on your electric bill, for all the 351 communities in Massachusetts to make up for this amount that we're charging. They're going to get their money back one way or another. But, I've always thought that, we're just taking whatever they report, and the Department of Revenue always used to have an issue with us just using what was reported for like the small businesses. If a small business sends in a form of list for all their items that they have in their commercial business, I never run with what they just give me. I use a pricing manual, and typically the value always comes in higher. Now they're saying, why shouldn't that be any different for the utility companies? We're taking their word that what they're giving us is a true number, but I think all these years we've known that, you know, we have no way of proving. Now we're going about and saying, look, we're using a methodology where we're using part of what you're coming up with, that's why they call it 50-50, and part of what we're coming up with, and it's going to increase your valuation. So this will be on the commercial, industrial, personal property side, we will definitely see an increase in the valuations pretty significantly for those 3 utility companies. And it's scary because again, they can question it. They may not pay that bill in their defense of, you know, arguing that it wasn't fair. But the appellate tax board actually agreed and said it was fair to do it the way we're going to go about doing it. So I think it's a win-win. And then we wait and see once the tax bills go out where they feel, you know, was it fair enough for them? Well, we've never done this before, so we're gonna have to wait and see.
Good.
Anything else on that? Okay, so we'll go to number 6. So because of all the abatement values are done, because you guys already did the real estate and personal property abatements, I have to start, I can't start making my changes for fiscal year 22 on anything until we actually record the values from last year. So right now I've already made those changes in the computer. So it's safe for us to create that, you know, moment in time, save fiscal year 21, so I can move on to fiscal year 22, map changes, construction changes, and personal property changes and chapter land changes going forward. So now that my computer has finally been set up, there's still little quirks here and there, but Vision is working really great and smooth, both here and when I use it at home. So I can go ahead and make those, save that file and create the historical data file and move forward with my changes, which I definitely need to do right now. Number 7, after you guys sign the 4 remaining exemption applications, we then need to set up reimbursements from the gateway so we can get some of that money back. And usually that's before May 1st. So as soon as you do those, I will put those into the gateway system for the DOR to give us, you know, whatever portion amount there that they decide to give us back on the reimbursements for the elderly, veterans, blinds, and yeah, those 3 categories. Number 8.
Mike, are you gonna do those with the motor vehicle? Are you gonna have those for us this week?
Oh, the exemptions, the four remaining exemptions. Yes. Yep. So you'll review and sign the applications. And then at our next meeting, the last thing that you'll have to sign is Tammy's certificates that she types up. And because the second half bills already went out, they'll end up getting the refund back as a direct check. So yeah, and that'll close that. After that, Gary, it will close out fiscal year 21 for all exemptions and all abatements. April 1st is the deadline that they give us.
Mike, so our next meeting is gonna be the 19th, scheduled meeting?
Yeah, is that okay? Is that
I'll be gone that week.
And
oh, you will?
I'm going that week as well.
Okay, do you want to change it to the 26th?
26
That
is
would be
fine.
better.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. That's perfect.
I have one more question.
Yep.
You just had a property that has an assessed value of 2.1 million, sell for 6.2. When does the assessed value ever catch up with the sale price? What does that schedule look like?
So if a home were to sell today for 2 million and we've got it assessed for, let's say, 1 million, we are and actually this is for you know, all the communities in Massachusetts, we're stuck to a January 1st assessment date. So that sale took place after the assessment date for the calendar year. The values that come out for the tax bill in the fall, those are generated from all the deed changes that happened last year. So when January 1 of this year rolled around, all the sales that took place in 2020 become the base for the next round of values. So, and what happens with that is, let's say we haven't adjusted the value and the new owner gets the tax bill, they're going to immediately question it and say, what happened here? Why is there a valuation difference? And there still could be, even if we were using that sale. But I will tell them your sale took place after the assessment date, so we won't look at that sale until the following year. It's like we have to freeze it in time. January 1 hits, we use all the sales that took place prior, and those become our sales analysis in the spring and summer. We look at all of those sales and we array those sales, and it's the assessor's job to weed out the good from the bad. So, you know, what we do is we send out sales questionnaires, we relook at the properties to determine if there was anything possible that could create an outlier. You know, is it a clean sale? You've got to do all that legwork before you actually have your database, because you want to make sure that there's not one or two sales in a certain category that are going to either manipulate or skew the rest of the array that you have. And we can definitely throw out, you know, high and low to conform to the Massachusetts certification guidelines, which is you've got to be between 90 and 110% of market value. And if our ratios are showing that we're within 80%, then we've got adjustments to make to get it closer to 100%, and vice versa. If we're showing assessments that are so high, but the sales are coming in low, then our job is to adjust the base rates and the land areas to make sure that we can get those to conform with what the assessments are. And it's you know, it's this year is going to be interesting, because the sales that we're using are all the sales from last year, and that's the year where things just went bonkers. You know, I mean, that 2020 is the year that we have more sales than we've ever had. And we also have sales in general that came in a lot higher than what their fiscal year 21 value is. So it might be either the easiest sales analysis I've ever done or the most difficult one I've ever done, because we could have categories where, you know, you've got maybe 5 sales that came in really good, you know, and then you've got sales that, you know, I think everyone thinks that every single sale that came through was higher than what we currently assessed it for. That's not true. But I will say it was a record year with the number of sales, and a record year with the sales prices higher than the assessment. Not in every category, but there's a chance that there will be a lot of assessments that will be going up.
When we see like a surplus, you know, like last year we had well over $1 million. This year we might have up to $1 million. Is that because of this lag where valuations is here, but then as the assessed values catch up with valuations? Like
No, valuation is not a part. It doesn't usually have anything to do with that. The only thing that the valuation, in the end, it could affect is if your tax rate is fluctuating. You know, ours was such there was barely any difference in the fiscal 21 and the fiscal 22. If you were to see a big influx in sales and everything changes where we're bringing our values up high, rule of thumb is if the budget remains consistent, then your tax rate is going to drop, because you don't need as much on that tax rate because your values are making up for it. So I'm foreseeing, if we're adjusting our values upward, there may be, and I haven't seen, you know, what the budget numbers are going to be, but if that were to remain consistent, what creates that surplus is if we're under reporting the actual receipts, which is going to be interesting again, because last year when we reported the receipts, they were basically from 6 months. Part of that 6 months of the beginning of the year, with only part of that being COVID related. Going into this year, we don't know. I mean, those receipts could be a lot lower than what we projected they were going to be last year. Although Ray and I actually thought about this, or I will say Ray thought about this, and he actually lowered those numbers quite a bit. So our target could come right in on our receipts, but the valuations themselves, even if we have that year apart before the assessments are looked at, that won't create that levy capacity. That levy capacity has been consistent. Well, I've been here for 26 years, and we've always had a levy capacity that hovered, well above 500,000, and which is a great thing. I mean, that's most communities, that's unheard of. My own community in North Adams, we would never see something like that. We would hope we could, but that is a healthy number to have for sure.
So Patrick, one thing you mentioned, if a property was sold for 2 million and it was assessed for $1 million, in a roundabout way, Michael said that just because something sold for 2 million doesn't mean it'll be assessed for 2 million by us. It basically has to be put through the whole appraisal process, the mass appraisal process, and the number will be what the number is. So Michael, you can speak to it. I mean, we can't directly tie any sale to any assessment.
No, not until, I mean, I always call it a filter process. I mean, it's, in the eyes of the seller and the buyer, they don't really know what we're doing at the end as far as the filtering process, because they could come back and say, well, how can you tell me that my sale is not a legitimate sale? And I always say, I'm not saying it's not an arm's length sale, but the process that we have to go through in order to make sure that that is not an outlier that's going to affect 2,000 properties, so if we're doing an array of, let's say, all the modern contemporary property sales, and let's say we've got 20 of them and 5 of them are so high, we could never get the assessment to where those valuations are without affecting all the ones that we consider the true arm's length sales. Without, if we were to do something like that, it would really throw off all the low end ones or even the middle sales in that category, just to justify maybe 2 or 3 higher sales. And like Doug said, I mean, in their eyes, they may be saying, well, how can you not use my sale? And we say to them, in the appraisal world and in the mass assessment world, there's no way we could, because our job is to be fair and full, a fair and full market value for everybody, not just for the high sales. So yeah, it's a definite process to filter those out and to come up with, you could start off with 40 sales total and end up reporting 21 sales to the Department of Revenue for your total base by the time everything is done. The public has every right to see the process and the sales analysis and to see and to know the method, and for me to also justify to them why we didn't use their sale in our study. And we will definitely do that. We would prove to the taxpayer, and they may like it or not like it, but in the end, it's a certification practice in order to get our valuation set by the Department of Revenue that we're actually using. And we're typically around what we feel is 100% of market value. But by time the tax bills get issued in the fall, you're talking, you could be 10 months into the year and your valuations could have already changed slightly. So I always say we're at 100% of market value, but I like to, at the same time, if I have a chance to explain it to the public, that, be aware that we can't just do something within a month and have a tax bill set the next month. It's a long process that can take up to a year to do.
Mike, would you say that it's fair to say that when we're questioned, it's more apt to be questions from when sales have taken place at below assessed valuation rather than higher? So people say, listen, you've assessed me for $1.5 million, but actually we paid $1 million, and that should be the
oh yeah, it's amazing.
That's more likely to be the case.
We get both. I mean, during the tax season, when abatements, the abatement period rolls around, you will definitely get, those that feel, without knowing the methodology, that is the sale price no matter what. I mean, and it is. I mean, that is what's recorded at the registry. That is the tool. The deed is the tool that we use, high or low. That is the start off kicker for doing everything. But amazingly, we do get a lot of phone calls and questioning our methodology, even if we've actually decreased the value from what it sold for. And that can happen. Like Doug said, I mean, it's not always going to be a spot assessment. Typically, that's not what happens. But yeah, there are definitely those that are wondering if it sold for 2 and we've got it at 1, why we don't have it at 2. So it can go both ways, and it can't, and we get those phone calls as well, for sure.
I have one last question. You mentioned farmland. Is that subject to kind of a tax clawback similar to forestry lands, like Chapter 61 lands? If somebody is getting a break for having farmland and they convert it to, let's say, residential use, subdivided or whatever, do we get, back years?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they actually, if someone was in a chapter, let's say for 5 years, I mean, typically that is the standard, especially if it's a forest management plan, because we have forestry, we have farmland, and we have recreational land here. So if they decide that they want to pull acreage out, the first thing that they have to do is they have to send a certified letter to the Board of Assessors and the Board of Selectmen with their explaining what their intentions are. And then the town has a certain amount of time to decide whether or not they want first right of refusal, they want to buy that property. And let's say you decide not to, and they still want to go forward, they have to pay a rollback tax with interest to the community. Or if they were in for 5 years, then we would get it for the fiscal year in question and the 4 years prior. If they were in for 10 years or even more, it's still going to be for 5 full years.
How many of those certified letters do we get a year? On average?
None.
Okay,
No, I mean, it's very, I think in the many years I've been here, that happened one time. And when I first started here, they were doing the Stonehill subdivision, and that was 84 acres that was coming out of a chapter land, and it was all paid for by the developer, the rollback tax. That was a huge amount of rollback tax on that, and they had no problem paying it. I mean, that development is amazing. So yeah, it can happen. They'll ask me to figure out the rollback tax for them. I have figured out rollback tax quite a few times, thinking that they're probably going to go through with it, and then nothing really happens. Another thing that I don't think new applicants realize is there's a lien put on the property. That acreage is liened at the Registry of Deeds. And in order for them to, that's a protection for the community, that if we can't get the rollback tax from them, we will not release the lien. So until they pay everything that was calculated, the lien will remain on the property. They have every right to sell the property, but if the new owner decides not to keep it under a chapter, the rollback tax has to be paid, and then we will release the lien for them to sell that property. So it is a protection, and we've got quite a few of them in town. And then they're responsible for hiring a forester, have a forest management plan, redo plans every 10 years. We'll send a reminder, but they typically know that this is something that they have to do. And we've got most of the ones that we have they've been here for decades. Year after year, it's the same thing. Very rarely do we get a new chapter applicant. And even if they, I've got to always run a refresher on, okay, this is what they have to file and this is what they have to do, because it's very rare that we get a new applicant. I think a lot of the land that's not under a chapter is under a restriction, which is something completely different. It doesn't, either if it's a restriction or a chapter, there's still a savings on your taxes and on the valuation. What I was talking about on the chapter land pricing is the farmers, this is just for the farmland. Every year they get together and they have an association where they work with the Department of Revenue to come up with a per acre charge that we use against the acreage that's already certified for the discount. And so it could be every year I go in, and if it's $100 a square foot, they may say this year, we're gonna charge them $108 a square foot. So I'll go in and change it for everybody, and they'll get a slight increase in the lower amount, so they're getting a savings to begin with, and it just might be a small uptick in what they pay in taxes from what the Farmland Valuation Committee tells us every year. Yeah,
Mike,
they also
speaking-
send us a listing of how much to charge for cattle, chickens, livestock, because if someone has a farm and we have farmland animals under personal property, we have to value them as well.
So how is High Lawn Farms has quite a lot of acreage in Stockbridge. Is that all under agricultural protection, 61?
Yes, whatever the amount that they have that lies in Stockbridge, they have to file their plans. It's an annual filing also.
For their cows, do they pay a fee?
No, for that, we don't get it. I think they file those for another community.
Probably,
Yep, yeah, we don't get that, but we definitely get the form of, not the form of list, but the actual filing for the amount that they have to pay for chapter, which is the CL1. And actually anyone under an agricultural filing, they have to prove to the assessors in an annual filing in the fall that they're actually generating $500 or more in their sales for whatever their land is being used for. And that may deter some new applicants as well. But again, it just typically the ones we have in town are the ones that we've had for a long time. And on the most part, they do follow the filing deadlines and rules. Sometimes we have to send out a reminder, but not too often.
You have their cattle in Stockbridge. You just have to drive down Route 7 and look to the right if you're going south.
Right. So number 8, the appellate tax board cases. I have 4 more that came through, and so I'm not going to discuss them here. But what I want to talk about is permission to talk with the 4. Actually, it's 2 applicants. And they're the ones that we've talked about before. It's the DeSisto School, Sheehan. They have a 2-year filing, and New Singular Wireless, which is one we've settled before. So I wanted to see if you guys were okay with meeting with the attorneys for Patrick Sheehan, which would be at our next meeting. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
And
right,
that would
because I've
be-
talked to him before. His name is Mike. He's really nice. And I told him I would get back to him. I knew he was going to file, and the appellate tax board is doing Zoom meetings, no in-house meetings anymore until, they say so, I guess. So they're doing their telephonic meetings and they're doing their Zoom meetings, which for me is fantastic. I'd rather do a Zoom meeting than have to travel out to Boston. So I've got to get in touch with the lawyers for both of the Sheehan property and New Singular Wireless. They're the only ones that ever question my methodology on the wireless cell phone valuations, and they seem willing to settle. But I don't know. I mean, it was hard to understand where they were coming from. I think they got their filings messed up in some communities. I'm going to do a little research today and get back to their attorney. But I also want to get back to DeSisto or Sheehan's attorney to schedule a Zoom meeting for our meeting on the 26th. We may not have, no matter what, I'll tell you what's going to happen.
Mike, do we go into executive session for that?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's okay for me to mention, the filings themselves aren't closed to the public, but everything else is. Any
Right.
discussion and any agreement that's made going forward. And again, I'm not as, I don't have as much anxiety going forward with those cases, seeing that they're Zoom meetings, so, but I thought when the last time, we did this, when we had and who the taxpayer was at that point, and we had the discussion for the last case, I thought that went really well. And, right now they have no other means of coming in, so it would have to be through a Zoom meeting. And I'm sure they would be okay with that. So I'll get back to them today and see if, they'll go for that. That will be it too. The meetings in May, it's May 13th, those are scheduled for. Once those are either heard or settled, there's no more cases sitting at the appellate tax board for the town of Stockbridge. Unless we see some coming through for fiscal year 21, in which they've got until the end of May to file. And I haven't received anything yet. So that doesn't mean we won't get any, because they usually wait until the last minute. But right now we're gonna be good to go once these 4 are done with. And last but not least, I mentioned on here, because you guys knew that Tammy was working as a floating position, we talked about that before, and she was covering for Terry's office. Well, now and Patrick might be able to, talk about this a little too. There's been a lot of changes in the hours here for a lot of employees. I'm not one of them. I travel far enough, and takes me long enough to get home that it wouldn't work out for me. But almost every office here is changing hours, still working the same amount of hours, but some are 8 o'clock till 4:30 or vice versa. They're earlier than later. And Tammy's gonna, as a floating position, she'll be in the office for 3 days, out on Thursday, and then working in Terry's office on Friday. I thought that was okay, because for me, I'll be here during the week. And if I have to take a day off, she'll still cover for both offices on Friday. We'll just put a note on the door, come see Tammy, and she'll help you with what, she needs. But it's been discussed amongst everyone here. And Patrick, I guess it's okay that people are doing this. Again, just doesn't work out for me right now.
It's up to Michael. I mean, I obviously it's up to eventually the select board, but my personal position is,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it seems to be working out great. I know in the treasurer tax collector's office, because they're both in there now, they're back to being in one office, and they've done an amazing job, moving things around and organizing in there. And so Erica actually is not here on Wednesdays, and Christine's not here on Fridays. But again, they're still working their same amount of hours, and we'll still give the public the same amount of service. It's just that, there's coverage no matter what for our regular time that we're here. And I don't seem to have a problem with it. I mean, do you guys have any concerns?
No.
Okay.
No.
And Tammy, we tried it last week for the first time, and it worked out fine. And again, I mean, I have time that I have to use before, we both do, before July 1st. But again, I try to make it so it's accommodates the whole town. So we'll work that out. But so far, so good. And Tom, I'm sorry, but I forgot to list the.
That's all right. I do have a quick update this time.
Okay.
Namely, I've talked with Ray about rolling over our funds. We have 6,372 in our account for the pilot committee. And I've explained that we do plan to reactivate the committee once we're past the pandemic, most of the issues. And
Okay.
I haven't really consulted about when with Gary and Jay, but I'm thinking probably we reactivate in the fall after the summer. But there does seem to be recognition that we need to finish up on this project, and that's my time frame. And I've also said that the 6,372 should be more than sufficient, so we don't have to have an article on the warrant.
Okay, I also didn't, oh, Patrick, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say, knowing that Riverbrook had sort of that giant elevator project, I made a suggestion at the select board that possibly we return that, and I should have touched base with you guys first. I want to apologize for that. It was just sort of like a realization that, that it was such a great gesture and we get so few of them from others who are far more deep pocketed. I sort of felt like maybe this one time we kind of, encourage them to spend the money on the women, but it was really the pilot committee's call, and I should have checked with you before I opened my mouth, so I'm sorry.
Oh, so
So-
it was, they had made a pilot amount and you decided to return it?
Thing, but I suggested in the meeting, this is Riverbrook and they're trying to add an elevator and they haven't funded.
Right,
And so I suggested maybe we don't accept it. And then, but after the fact, I kind of realized that really more is, a pilot committee, question. And so I just wanted to bring it up and say, I'll try to be better.
So just for clarification, Patrick, I think it is the call of the Board of Selectmen, but I think it's good to touch base with us first, just so that we're in the know about this.
Yeah.
And could you again tell me what the amount was that they gave and you
2,000.
2,000 even?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I didn't catch that. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, so
Can I just jump in here for 1 second? There was no decision made about that. That was set aside for the time being. Just so you know, there was no decision.
I said that.
Oh, thank you for the clarification, Roxanne. Okay.
Yeah,
I
so-
must have, yeah, go ahead.
Just confirm,
Yeah,
Michael.
I would agree with Thomas that we're just an advisory, ad hoc committee. It's the decision lies squarely with the select board.
The select board holds all pilot decisions.
definitely.
Okay,
So for Patrick and Roxanne, I think you should feel free to proceed to make that call. And I will touch base with Jay, the other member of our committee, just to make sure he's on board in terms of advisory, in terms of our advisory role.
sounds good. So we all set,
Mike.
Michael? We getting ready to close the meeting?
I have
or-
just one
Go ahead.
thing for me. We had like we do every year, the folks that applied for elderly assistance from the overpayment on the property taxes. And due to the pandemic, we didn't meet in person again. And what we decided we would do is just take a conservative approach. And for those who applied, we used the same formula as last year, and everybody got what they got last year.
That's good. Did you have money left over?
And there's still money left over, yes.
Oh, wow, that's great.
We try not to spend it down. We try to keep a cushion in there.
Does that money get carried over
Yes,
extra?
and it's much appreciated for anybody who did contribute.
Absolutely.
Gary, offhand, do you know what those numbers are in terms of?
Tammy
What
could
the-
give them to you. Tammy has them. I don't have them readily
Okay,
here.
sure.
So-
Tammy said Tammy said it was $4,500.
Is the
That
cushion,
was,
No, that's the amount that was distributed.
okay.
how- Gary, do you have any idea how much the cushion is? I mean, just curious if you got like 1 year's worth or 2 years worth of cushion.
Tammy would know that too.
She said it's like $12,000. That's
Okay.
still in there.
Okay,
Good.
So you have almost over 2 years of cushion in there in case the
That's a
receipt.
great amount.
Right. Yeah,
Good to
'cause,
know.
I mean, we haven't been getting, the influx that we had in the past.
And Gary, approximately how many residents are taking advantage of this? Would you say? About
12?
Okay.
8. There's 8 of them.
Oh, 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was actually down from the previous year.
Yeah, that's unusual. Hmm. Okay. Anything else?
Just while
Not
we're
for me,
on that,
thanks.
I think that's such a great program. Do you have any thoughts about whether we should be more proactive in notifying potential people that this is an option? Or do people, is it know about it pretty well through word of mouth and what have you?
Well, it's put on the tax bills,
And I
So
think
they-
it's on
they
the
do see it on-
website too.
and I think it's on the website.
Okay,
You don't see your tax bill, isn't that correct?
What, Pat?
You have a mortgage, you don't see your tax bill.
Good
No, it
point.
gets sent to the mortgage companies send a file initially before the tax bills go out, and we notify them what the amounts are gonna be, and a lot of times it's done electronically.
Because I'm just saying that a lot of potential donors, if they have a mortgage, never hear about the program, is the point I'm making.
I want,
Yeah, it's possible.
yeah, last year, Patrick, I don't remember if you saw them, but last year we actually put together a flyer that went on town hall doors that, talked about to alert people if they show up at town hall, but certainly some people do in terms of the back lobby. But we do have posters put together to remind people that they can take advantage of these, couple of options.
They
Good
could
to
put it in
know.
the senior newsletter too.
Yeah, great
That's a-
idea.
yeah, that is a great idea.
I mean, and nothing says we couldn't do a little supplemental flyer in the tax bill as well, just to
Yeah.
just to
It's, but like
remind.
Pat says, if you have a mortgage, the chances of you seeing that are not,
True. Yep.
Good point.
Any other issues?
no. Motion
guys-
to adjourn.
Do you guys know when you're gonna come in? You're gonna call first?
Mike, I'll do it today.
Okay,
I will try to do it today and I'll call from the lobby when I'm there.
okay. All right.
For me, Wednesday would be the best day. Is that plenty of time, or if you
Oh,
prefer?
yeah,
I come
yeah,
in-
everything's ready to go.
Okay,
Yep,
thank you.
okay. Okay, then I guess we're all set. In the,
Okay.
also, I wanted to mention, we found out that our accountant Ray is leaving.
Oh, what
no.
a shame.
Yeah, I know. I thought it was an April Fool's joke. It
Oh,
wasn't.
dear.
Yeah, I know. I mean, devastating. I mean, he's amazing. I just want to put that out there. That's gonna be.
We're all bereft. I miss him so much.
Is
Yes.
he,
He's
Can I-
retired.
he is retiring. Okay,
Yeah.
that's, well, good
Do you
for him.
know what the date is, Mike?
First,
May 1st.
First.
So I would move that we send him a note of appreciation for all his work.
I definitely will. I'll get
I
a
agree.
card from the board.
And
I'm
maybe
sure we're
something.
gonna do something here too. Again, I just found out on Friday. And it still hasn't hit me yet. Yep. I will say in all my years here, I just can't, stress enough how amazing he is and was with getting me, and I know everyone else, but me speaking personally, all of the information that I needed for the tax rate. It was seamless. I never even had to ask for anything. He just brought it to me. So he's top dog for me. It will be a big loss for sure, but I will get a card for you guys to sign.
And actually, Gary, are you up for reelection this year?
Yes,
And you put your papers in.
yes.
Yep.
Good.
Awesome. Okay, guys, so the next meeting will be the 26th.
Great.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Very good.
Thank you.